Welcome to Marketing with Confidence. I'm your host, Marianne Amies. We're going to be talking all things digital and online marketing for business owners and marketing professionals. If you've been feeling overwhelmed by your digital marketing, be sure to listen along and you'll hear tips, interviews and more that will give you the confidence to create marketing you love. I'm so glad to be joined today by Amy Summers, Director and Lead Coach at Craft Coaching. Thank you for being here today, Amy.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to talk to you, Marianne, especially in this way.
I know. I'm very fortunate that Amy has been my leadership coach for, I think we're coming into the third year or definitely wrapping up the second year, and has been an amazing part of my own growth. And so it is really exciting to talk to you in this format, in a public format.
Absolutely. And about a topic that you and I speak about a lot too.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So I guess, look, to let everybody else in on who you are, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to carve out your space as a leadership coach?
Absolutely. I've been doing this work for almost 15 years now. So I started in more of the corporate space, coaching executives, CEOs, leaders, managing leadership programs and supporting executive coaches as part of, our bigger programs to deliver coaching as well. So my career has spanned every angle, I guess, of leadership development. So being the supporter, being an associate coach, and then managing programs as well.
Wow.
And over the years, I've just become accredited in a number of different assessments and diagnostics, and I've been afforded the opportunity to work with some incredible people from all sorts of industries and backgrounds. And I think all of those experiences are used every day now with our clients who are generally leaders in creative industries and entrepreneurs, and they're my favorite people to work with.
Oh, amazing. And how long have you been running Craft?
So Craft has been running since 2007.
Wow.
We rebranded in 2016. So before 2016, Craft Coaching and Development was called the Creative Edge.
Yeah.
And Craft Coaching and Development, that rebrand really was the kickoff to what you can see today, and finding, that really kind of ideal client that we love working with and doing the work that we're doing today. So even though we've been running the business for a very long time, it was alongside bigger media projects or contract work with other consulting companies, or I had a stint in government and in education.
Yeah.
And so really, in my mind, 2016 was when it really was born into what you see today.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And obviously, I think that's part of, many journeys when you go from a professional career to having your own business. You kind of, it's like you straddle the two worlds for a little bit of, supporting your income in what you've always done whilst you're building the thing that you really want to do. And yeah, I taught marketing and business for the first, I think 2 to 3 years of my of Wise Ups journey, because I had to give it time to develop, and I had to give it time to, I guess, not have that pressure that it has to make it in the first 12 months because all your financial eggs are in that bucket, and doing great paid work. And it also gives you that connection back to what you've known in industry and those sorts of things. I mean, for me, I guess I stayed more connected with teaching, which is something I always loved, and was able to use that to then have the time. And I think I've been thinking a lot lately about time and pressure, the pressure that people put on themselves to achieve things in certain time periods. And if you can have a patient approach to building your business, what that does for you in a different way, in a longer game sort of way.
Absolutely. And I think my story is pretty similar to yours, Marianne, in that after having children, that was really the catalyst to me saying, okay, now this is the chance to really dive in and to take the risk. And I think you can work part-time when you come back from maternity leave quite legitimately. And so I think I had a bit of a crossroad then where I realized, well, either I could work part-time for somebody else and I won't have time to coach under my own banner, or I need to throw myself into that and quit my job. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah. And it is. It's. I mean, it's so many emotions. It's scary. It's exciting. It's the unknown. And I think it's a unique experience of women that we go down our career path. We finish school. We set off towards our passion, and we're building these careers. But then, if children is part of your plan, at some point or another, it's a crossroads because you have children, and then it's almost like your career aspirations don't go away, but you can't go after them, not necessarily, depending again in what industry and all those sorts of things, but it can be challenging to go after them with the same energy and focus and then put the energy and focus towards, raising a family, if that's a priority for you as well. And I think it's that crossroads of, well, I don't want all of what I've done so far to account for nothing. Like, I don't want to lose all the progression I've had and where I am, but also I kind of feel driven by different things now. And I think I spent the first 3 years of my sort of freelancing, wise up in its infancy, talking about when I would go back to work. I would say that all the time. And then I'll go back to work, once I have we're going to have another baby, and then I'll go back to work because it makes sense. And then I'll go back to, I was so stuck on that thought that going back, and I think for me, it was more around the people and the team and the environment rather than the unkicked career goals. I mean, I'd already been in the workforce full time for sort of 16, 17 years. And just this caught up in when I go back and then thinking, oh, hang on a second, if I can build the people around me, like I don't need to, there's nothing else there that I can't fulfill myself in my own business. It was just that I guess that mindset shift of what that traditional job represented.
Absolutely. And I think when you're on maternity leave, it's a perfect incubator really for building up, your clientele, building up slowly the capacity within your business, because you have to do that anyway. So it's funny. It's when I look back, that was a really important decision because it has led to the business as you see today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess as the, CEO of your business, and in this podcast, I'm sort of talking to different CEOs and drawing from them expertise to help others, but also having that kind of peek inside your own business life and your own business world. So, for yourself in your business, how do you balance working on the business and working in the business?
Good question. I think this is a really important question to clarify as well, because I know from the leaders that I coach, they, we all consume a lot of guidance from other leaders that we look up to. So we're reading books, we're listening to podcasts, we're taking on advice. We're going to conferences, we're hearing stories. And a lot of the time we hear messages like, in order to be an effective leader, you need to be up at 5 a.m. and have a structured routine. And, you need to have a regime.
Yeah.
And absolutely, that works for some people. And I think that structure is really important for certain working styles. For me, and I'm going to bring in a little bit of insight into some of, my thinking and behavioural profiles, because we're going to be talking a little bit about that today. But, I'm a type 4 learner, so big picture, dot connector, quite directed by my vision. And that's according to the format model. Then I'm also an SI in the DISC model, which is steadiness and influence. And so that influences my working style in the sense that I've got this big picture kind of, I see opportunity a lot, and I am okay to take a risk. I feel really comfortable connecting quite complex ideas into something that's useful for people. But then I've got this steadiness part of my profile as well. And I've learned over the years that I actually do need to lean into systems to be a great executor or implementer. So as much as I don't always kind of prescribe to that sort of, just that idea that I've got a balance, or, that there is a way to do that working on and working in the business really effectively all the time. I know for me that having really great systems helps me to be effective. I can, empty my brain when I have those big ideas. My thinking progresses pretty quickly, so I have to allow other people to keep up with that too. Otherwise, they feel a bit left behind. And time block efficiently. That really helps me as well. So, that balance between working on and working in the business is really a constant dance, but it is that juxtaposition between the big picture and then knowing that I need that structure to be effective. And in doing that, I just have to prioritize both, and I'm always finding the dance between both, and some weeks it's one way, some weeks it's the other, and some weeks it's a lovely balance where I get to the end of Friday and I think, wow, that's been really nice. And then, another thing, I don't know, you and I have talked about this lots, Marianne, is the importance of just getting that team, that right team in place that works to their strengths and allows you to do the work that only you can do in the business, which is working on the business. No one else is going to do that. Apart from the CEO, apart from the leader, in the way that a leader or CEO will do it. So I think it's really important to, have those great systems around you, but then also have that great team around you that allows you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that playing to your strengths as well. And I think you're so right, that work that only you can do, because I think there's that risk of feeling disconnected. I mean, I know I've certainly had the times where I'm sort of, okay, I'm building the team and that's really good. And then you kind of muddy, well, who am I? And I think that's, my own nature to be quite task orientated, is then it's sort of like, well, if I'm not doing the do day in, day out, like what is my role here? What am I for? And I think remembering all the things that the leader and the CEO as well needs to keep their eye on, needs to, I feel like saying the puppet master, but it doesn't obviously do the team justice of who they are, but it's, the person behind the scenes almost. You become more behind the scenes, making sure everything is running, making sure everybody is okay, everybody's where they need to be and is supported, and that we're tracking towards what we need to track. And it's a huge shift. And I think the dance analogy is beautiful as well. It's such a dance. And I think some days you feel like you're ready for the stage, and the other days you feel like the when you used to take your little kids to the ballet class and they just kind of plot around the place.
Yeah. And so important as well that, we challenge that idea of balance.
Yeah.
Balance is a practice. And I think, a lot of the time you're not going to get it right.
Yeah.
A lot of the time you're going to be working on it. A lot of the time it's not going to feel, it's going to feel like that sort of struggle or juggle, which, again, I think we need to challenge those words as well. But we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get that right all the time, that work-life balance, the energy balance. And sometimes the best thing that you can do is actually accept that this is a practice, almost like parenting. Every day you're trying to get that right, and sometimes all you're doing is learning. And so, I guess to just reiterate that I don't think I've ever met anybody that has that completely figured out, because I don't think it's a destination. I think it's a journey, and it's something that is evolving every day, and that as long as you practice it, you're getting halfway there.
And I think as well as being a journey, it's fluid, isn't it? Because different things get thrown to you. You have those magical weeks where everything's to task and everything, is humming, and you've got the time to do the extra, the deeper work that you wanted to do. And then you have weeks where, it all goes out the window. And I think you're right, not putting that pressure on ourselves to think I have to be in balance. And I think accepting that sometimes you do have to work at night, but you shouldn't have to work at night all the time. And that is, and then other times you can have a week off and do the things that you love, because that's what you've built your business to have that flexibility to do. And as long as you're not too far in either direction all the time, I think, you're practicing.
And sometimes we have to work at night, and sometimes we want to as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that's an important part of balance as well. What are you making decisions about? What are you making choices around? And sometimes those choices as a leader or a CEO are to work a little bit harder this week, work a bit longer, because you know that it's going to get you somewhere where you want to get to. Or, maybe you've got a week off coming up and you know that you get a breath there. But I think making that conscious decision around that word balance is really important.
Yeah, no, I love that. And the next thing I'm going to ask you, you touched on briefly, and it is the CEO cliche, really, of the morning habits. And I think partly why I ask this question to people is to see the behind the scenes, because I don't think, I definitely read all the 5 a.m. club stuff and I was like, this is not for me. I'm not a 5 a.m. How can I be successful and not get up at 5 a.m.? So I found it very fascinating.
You hear that other voice that happens internally, right? Which is, well, maybe I'm not cut out for this, or maybe I don't have what it takes, maybe I'm doing this wrong.
Yeah.
And I guess the message that I want to get across about that is that absolutely, if you get up at 5 a.m., you will be more effective because you've got an extra 3 hours a day. However, if you know that your high energy peaks during the day are not first thing in the morning, which a lot of people, they aren't, work with that, because you're going to be working with your natural cycles, your natural energy. Yeah. Everyone's got a different rhythm. So, I guess the challenge is to find out what yours is.
Yes, I think mine's sleep and coffee. What about you? What morning habits do you prescribe to, or do you partake in?
I wouldn't say I'm a habit person either. So, I've got things that I do regularly that I know make me feel really good.
Yeah.
And make me feel energized. But I also allow myself not to do them if they're not feeling like the right thing to do for that day or that week. And as I've gotten older, I've been better at working with my natural kind of rhythm and cycle. And I don't just mean cycle as a woman, but cycle in terms of energy. I know what happens for me throughout the year.
Yeah.
I know what happens for me throughout a week. I also know what happens for me generally within a day.
Yeah.
And so I know within those sort of, those time frames, what I can work with and how do I get the most out of that time.
Yeah.
So most mornings I would do something to move my body. It doesn't need to be, a workout as such, but some mornings it is.
Yeah.
But I ocean swim. I play tennis, as you know. I do walking meetings quite a bit. So if I'm on the phone with somebody, I encourage them to go for a walk as well. I think it's really good to just move your body while we're thinking, while we're, accessing that strategic part of our brains.
Yeah.
And, I think over the years, I've worked out that really just that movement has been a really important part of my well-being and maintaining energy, because I guess what I do can be really taxing. I do it day in, day out. For me to perform at a high level, which I have to be because, I'm coaching people that are performing at a high level, I need to look after myself. Yeah. So, and sometimes that means a greasy toasty for lunch, I am not going to pretend that it is not comfort food sometimes, and it's not choosing to, work on the couch if I can.
Yeah.
But other times it's an hour workout. It's, doing 3 hours of exercise a day. It just depends. And I've gotten better at accepting and allowing myself to make those choices as they come up.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, the work that you do, there's a huge emotional output, and mental output, obviously, listening, processing, responding, guiding, and being so intentional about what you do and don't say. Definitely conversations you and I have had before about intentional thought, but yes. I can only imagine that some days that just leaves you empty because there's so much giving in what you do as well.
Yeah. And, I think that ties really nicely into what we want to talk about in the second half of today's podcast as well, because I think it used to leave me drained, but, and this also ties into the advice that I give for any budding coaches out there, that when they ask, how do you do it? How do you start coaching? And my advice is always just coach for 5,000 hours. That's all. That's the only way to get really good at it. Just do a lot of coaching.
Yeah.
And I think, getting back to, I guess, what I've learned over those thousands and thousands of hours of coaching over years and years with many, many people, and lots of training and lots of support behind the scenes as well, is that, you just, you've got to lean into your own emotional intelligence and your own ability to perceive your own emotions, manage your own emotions while you're helping other people manage theirs.
Yeah.
And, if you're feeling, I'm pretty good at kind of picking up that feeling of, today was a heavy day, or I'm feeling drained, slightly drained today, therefore I've got to fill my cup tonight so I'm okay tomorrow. Whereas I think when you're starting out on that journey, you're less in tune with those subtle signs.
Yeah.
You'll be more, the tendency will be to push yourself more so. And I think over years and years of coaching, you realize you just can't do that. You've got to be really measured. make sure that you're filling your cup if it's feeling like it's emptying out, and do it before it gets to a point where, you know, you've got nothing to give.
Yeah. I think that's good advice for anyone, you know, that
leading anybody.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But there's no shortcut to that.
No.
That is just, again, a practice, a constant practice, noticing, observing, you know, and over thousands of hours of doing it, you finally learn the lesson.
Maybe too soon. Well, I think that leads us beautifully into a chat today about emotional intelligence. I obviously have just done some work with you on emotional intelligence, measuring emotional intelligence, which I found fascinating. And, you know, we both then thought it was a great opportunity to talk about what is emotional intelligence and, you know, what's the impact, I guess, for CEOs in terms of their business into, you know, tapping into their own emotional intelligence as well as, I guess, fostering it in other people.
Yes. Yeah. A topic that I'm super passionate about, not just because I know the research. I have been trained in the MSCEIT tool, and I know a lot about the science behind how impactful building emotional intelligence is for leaders, but also because I see it every single day in our clients.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a real life case study every day, seeing, you know, our beautiful clients using their EI over IQ and getting the results from doing that. So there's hundreds of case studies and research on the impact of EQ. But, you know, just as a little, I guess, a summary of that, you know, EQ has twice the power of IQ to predict high performance. So as much as smarts are in, you know, is an important part of a leader doing a great job, to be technically brilliant, to be clever, to be textbook intelligent.
Yeah.
We know from the research that actually EQ has twice the impact on the outcomes that leaders get. So, you know, that solid research over probably mostly around the last sort of 2 to 3 decades. Sort of, I guess, come out of work like Daniel Goleman's work, obviously, but he was not the, you know, sometimes it's spoken about that Daniel Goleman was the sort of grandfather of EQ, but there were lots of researchers, you know, looking into EQ way before his very famous book was written. But, you know, there's so many positive impacts of, you know, EQ on different parts of someone's business, you know, obviously leadership, ability to lead other people and be a, you know, a steward for others, but, you know, engagement, creating a positive climate or culture for people to work in, the ability to work as a team and collaborate. It's got a really positive impact on sales and customer loyalty. So there's so much good stuff that can come out of building EQ in your team and yourself as well.
Yeah.
It might be useful if I shared the results of one of those studies with your listeners as well. There's a great piece of work by David Rossetti from the University of Wollongong. There's quite a great body of research coming out of Australia at the moment, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
This piece of research was particularly focused on EQ and its impact on leadership effectiveness. So they took just over 40 senior execs and they asked them to complete the MSCEIT, so the same test that you completed, Marianne. And then they also, and it's just for your listeners as well, this is an ability test specifically designed to measure your emotional intelligence quotient. So an IQ test as well, and then a personality test. So they got them to complete the MSCEIT, an IQ test, and a personality test. Then they measured performance through a 360-degree assessment from that leader's direct reports and their managers.
Yeah.
And what they were trying to learn from that was, whether that leader was performing and whether they were having that positive impact on their direct reports and the managers. And what they found was, that higher EQ was associated with higher leadership effectiveness, and that higher EQ explained the variance not explained by either the personality test or the IQ test. So this was particularly strong in one area of EQ, which was perceiving emotions. So the ability to know what other people were feeling, being able to read people accurately, being really good at recognizing your own emotions and your own feelings, and your ability to express those feelings appropriately, and also your ability to read between the lines with dealing with people and in conflict. And imagine for a leader, that is an incredibly valuable set of skills. And a set of skills that, we know from this research can actually be built over time. Much like IQ, you can practice it. Again, that word practice. And, there's all sorts of studies out there as well that have shown when IQ goes up, so does revenue, so does profitability, so does employer engagement. So, there's lots of reasons to be investing in this and to, cultivate it in yourself, but also in the team. What was your experience of doing the MSCEIT?
It was absolutely fascinating, as you know, and I guess for me, a little bit overwhelming. Because getting such, I find it hard to say, getting such strong results, I'll say, I found a little bit overwhelming. It's sort of like I haven't really known how to not emotionally acknowledge it, but I don't want to be an egotistical person walking. Maybe that's my high IQ worried about my high EQ worried about my effect of me thinking I have a high EQ on other people. I'm in like an inception hole. But I think, look, it explained a lot of stuff for me. And I've always talked about like a strong gut feel, for people, for situations. And it's hard when you feel an intuitive or you're not always guided by the facts and figures. And I love facts and figures. I love data and I love numbers. But, there's definitely another side of me that reads the room, that reads people. And I think the validation that maybe that's not just a whim was really interesting to go, actually, I've completed this test. I can break down my results. I can see where my strengths are. And that feels quite validating to know it's not just me saying, oh, I had a good feeling about that person, because we all say those sorts of things and they don't ever really feel very weighted. I do believe I can generally tell when, a group of, disharmony in a group of people, or somebody's not feeling engaged or heard or valued, and those sorts of things. And I think as a leader, there's such a opportunity there, and with my team and with my clients, where I've been able to, I guess, tune into that. And I have at some point, not that I've cared too much, but I've definitely skewed to the people pleasing side of life for a very long time. And I think the EQ and the MSCEIT tool almost helps me to understand in some ways how to acknowledge other people's emotions, but not to then make it my responsibility to fix them, just because I can see what they are, and I can read what people are going through, not then making it my responsibility to make it positive for them.
Absolutely. It goes back to, when we went through your results, the question that I asked you was, okay, what do we do with this? Because, for the listeners out there, Marianne's results were probably the highest that I've ever seen. And I've been using this tool and been accredited in this tool for, many years. And it unearthed a strength for her own leadership, but also almost a kind of a little gem that we unearthed that we knew was there, but we suddenly had the data to support. Okay, wow, we've got something that could be incredible here for your leadership journey.
Yeah,
and I guess that's the thing, isn't it? How do we use it to our advantage, rather than it being a skill that takes us down a path of putting other people's needs before our own, before the businesses, before our clients.
Yeah.
And that is the tricky thing with EQ, that you find a beautiful balance between, using it as a skill for good for others and for yourself.
Yeah.
While it not taking you down a path of, overanalyzing, feeling too much, taking on the feelings of other people, taking on the responsibility for other people's feelings.
Yeah.
Finding a way that you can actually use it as a tool to build business acumen versus take away from you as a leader. And it's a tricky dance. Again, practice and dance is becoming a theme in today's combo. And how we do that is we've just got to be really strategic about how we use it.
Yeah. And I think it's like all information, and, again, knowledge is power, and just knowing that gives me a different lens to see that kind of need to make everybody happy. Like, it gives me a different lens to see that through and to understand that it's, my need to make other people happy may also just be the fact that it's that empathy, I just feel it. I feel everything for everybody else. And you're right, how can I use this knowledge to empower others in some way to take responsibility for themselves and where they're at, and to be their own, I want to say people pleaser, but, to be their own solution. And I think it's that, that rescuing and that just feeling everything and wanting to dive in and make sure that nobody feels anything uncomfortable ever. But really it's about empowering people to realize what they're feeling, in some ways maybe help them see it the way I see it, and then, help support them as they move themselves to a better place. And, I even just saying that, I think of it as the role of parent as well. It's so similar. I think we're all told, and rightly so, not to rescue our kids, not to solve the problems. My son's just started high school, and, the school basically said, if we can ask you anything, it's just to stay out of it. And if they have a problem with the teacher, let them be the first to deal with it. If they're wrongly accused or wrongly punished, that let them be the one that stands up for themselves. Or if they they're
Gorgeous.
disorganized and they forget the thing on the day. Don't run it up to school. And it's so true. And I see parents in the group chat that aren't letting go. And I just think we've got to, it's that failing upwards as well. Like we have to let them fail. We have to let them make their own. It's not life threatening. It's not, if you wear the wrong shirt on the wrong day, you'll bounce back. It's I think that need to rescue and balancing that.
Yeah, and that balance between wanting to be a leader and sometimes getting that mixed up with being a manager. Leading isn't always solving the problem for someone or managing the task or, as you were saying, stepping in. And even if you know the answer, just resisting telling somebody that you know the answer, and actually finding a space where you can just be a steward. You can be a guiding light. You can pose the right question that potentially helps someone else build their own EQ and manage it more sustainably in the future, because then they're not looking to you for the answers. They're not looking to you to be the one that steps in and solves the problem. They're able to do it themselves with a bit more confidence next time. And, it's very, very similar to parenting. I can't tell you how much.
And it's that letting go as well, because there's a validation in being the go-to. There's a validation in being the problem solver. And, it doesn't feel great when someone, when you know the answer and you can tell that person, or when you can solve the problem and show them how to, wrap it up and put the bow on it, and so I think there's a letting go. Like my worth is not solving these problems, and I think there's, and again, like the retreat we did together last year, like so much of that comes to mind in that letting go, like not being the filler of gaps, not being the, letting other people fall, letting other people fail and learn from that, because failure is it's just a step. It's a stepping stone in a longer journey. And I failed, to get where I was. I had to fail at things, and letting other people, and again, parenting teams, letting failure happen, because that's where the growth is, and none of it matters. None of it will define the person.
And so much about emotional intelligence as well, because one of those hallmark characteristics of high emotional intelligence is the acceptance of all emotional states. So, much like the acceptance of failure, being okay to feel disappointment, being okay to feel anger, being okay to feel grief if you feel, a path that you were going down is lost, or, a hire hasn't worked out, or a part of your strategy needs to be reworked. There's a grief involved in having to change direction, no matter how agile we are in our thinking. And just being okay to be with those emotions as they come up. Like you were saying, just accepting that part of success is trying things, testing, learning from them, failing, trying again, and that you're not going to get it right every single time. And that's just as valuable as kicking goals every time you try.
Yeah, it's so true. So true. More valuable, when you're kicking goals, when you're winning easily, you're just on rinse and repeat. You're not really growing. You're just like, I'm good at this thing. I'll do it again. But when you're not good, or when you're not finding it easy, it's that whole discomfort is growth, isn't it? That's when you're testing and trying.
And I can tell you from, our clients' perspective, when we've had entrepreneurial thinkers, entrepreneurial leaders that have figured out a formula, have figured out a method to get that successful outcome, whether it be for their own business or for a client, the the challenge is gone.
Yeah.
And it's really satisfying for a short period of time because they've unlocked the potential and they're suddenly like, wow, I've got the formula. And then I can tell you now the experience is often then just of one trying to find that challenge again.
Yeah.
And they get bored really quickly, and there's a hunger, there's an appetite for the next thing.
Yeah.
And so, again, going back to that word practice, it's really important that we, I guess, accept and welcome the whole process and the journey of getting to that successful outcome, because the successful outcome is not always what we expect it to feel like.
Yeah. Once the kind of champagne's popped and the party's over, there's that, it's almost like a grief of the achievement.
Yeah.
So, well, now what? Like, now what's my purpose now? Who am I now? And I guess that's why those entrepreneurs that, sell their companies for millions of dollars, then go and start something else, because that silence, that stasis is almost unbearable to the discomfort of learning and growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, emotionally intelligent leaders can see that in themselves, that they need that constant challenge and they need to find the thing that pushes them and that enriches their experience of being a leader and feeling like they're making an impact and they're able to, set a vision. And that's part of the journey, that you've got to keep finding those opportunities to grow and to learn and to, just deepen your experience, because it's the process that actually engages us. If we're true entrepreneurs, at the core, it's the process that's the fun bit. And that is failure, like you said. And sometimes it's the hard emotions. And sometimes it's the, it's the hard bits along the way.
Yeah, 100%. Before we wrap up, what do you think as leaders and I guess as CEOs, how can we build EQ in others and use it within our organization?
Yeah, good question. So there's lots of models that help people explain EQ, and there's also lots of diagnostics out there that you can use. The one that we use is MSCEIT, and we use that because it is an ability test. So it's a test that actually tests your ability to do this as a skill versus a self-report or versus what other people might think or see in your their experience of you. And therefore it can't be faked. It can't be shifted in any way. And the MSCEIT measures your EQ in 4 different areas. And so you can kind of break it down into those 4 areas to work out, where your strengths lie, where potentially where's an opportunity for you to develop. And then from that, you can actually start to create some strategies to do that. And the beautiful thing about EQ is that there are lots of really meaty, practical strategies to build your EQ. So it's not there's not lofty kind of ideas at the end of doing a tool like the MSCEIT. There's really grounded practical strategies that you can start putting into place, and you can shift your results quite quickly if you're practicing those things. It's almost like you can set yourself a bit of a training manual after you know what your results are. So there's a couple of strategies that I know are really, really easy to implement and have the best kind of results.
Yeah.
So the first one being just knowing your own patterns of emotions, cycles, moods, like we were talking about earlier when we were talking about morning habits.
Yeah.
If you know what works for you and you know the patterns in your own emotional response, you're going to be able to manage those emotional responses a lot more effectively in the future.
Yeah.
So, just getting to know what those contributing factors are to your emotional state. So, what do you know creates certain emotions that are useful or not useful?
Yeah.
And you can do that through a number of ways. We've actually got and maybe I'll send you a link for your listeners to download it, because it's a free resource that we've got on our website, and it allows either you can look at the mood task match exercise on our website, or the emotions wheel exercise. And what those two exercises help you to do is just identify what's happening when you're feeling a certain emotion, what you need to do to cultivate a certain mood and what that mood is useful for, and then how to describe that emotion to others or to yourself. So just knowing your patterns, knowing those contributing factors really helps. The second little tip would be to start to build a greater vocabulary of your own emotions. So, it's so tempting when we're busy CEOs to just, someone asks you how you are, and it's so tempting to just say, yeah, I'm great, I'm fine. Or, or the Pollyanna optimist who constantly says, I'm terrific, I am exceptional today, even though they're dying inside. Rather than saying fine or okay, practice just picking 3 emotions that describe what you're feeling to a deeper degree. And those 3 emotions could be really different from one another.
Yeah.
That's another important part of EQ, that, emotions can sit alongside each other quite comfortably and look really different.
Yeah.
So you feel angry, surprised, and anxious all at the same time. But the 3 emotions that you pick, give your team or give your clients or whoever you're communicating to a better understanding of the complexity in which it is to be you as a human being.
Yeah.
So it's not just fine, it is it's inviting them into your emotional world. And what that does as well is help you practice building the vocabulary around your emotions. The third one being paying close attention to micro expressions. You and I have talked about this so much.
We have.
And so, and just for your listeners, like, you've had times where you've picked up micro expressions and you've doubted yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
You've thought, was I seeing something there? Now we know your MSCEIT results. We know that you were spot on. But just paying that conscious attention to expressions that flash over someone's face within a split second of them feeling a certain way. So a micro expression is an expression that sometimes is just barely visible and will flash across someone's face when maybe you say something to them, or you ask them a question, or they listen and observe, and you just notice a flash of something and you're not quite sure what it is. That conscious attention can give you insight into what might be happening with your team, what might be happening with your clients, much more accurately than listening to what they're saying to you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you can do training to get better at that. You can just sit back and observe people.
Yeah.
Practice doing that. But that gives you this little secret tool in your toolkit that you can basically bring out whenever you need to gain some deeper insight into what might be going on for a person. Because as human beings, we're great at telling, especially the leaders and CEOs of our businesses or the businesses that we're working for, what they want to hear.
Yeah, for sure.
But micro expressions cannot be hidden. So it's a really, really good one to pay attention to. And then, another great little tip before we finish up is just changing the context of an environment or, a location or timing of an event in order for you to get the best emotional response out of yourself or those involved. So if you can feel something emotionally happening, say, in a meeting, or in a session, and you're aware that it's not useful, then just practice changing the context or the location or the timing or anything that you've got within your control. Practice just changing and tweaking those things that are, quite easy to control. And you find that just those little shifts can help shift an emotional response quite quickly. So, they're probably my top tips.
They're great. They're very practical, which is fantastic. And I think what's great about them as well, they're not just tips for the CEO, the leader, but they're also tips that you can work with your team to practice and to experiment with and to learn from. So I think, obviously you touched on that amazing research that the impact of EQ is so high on a business. So if we can be better ourselves, but also empower our team to recognize and interpret and sort of gain more control or more insight into that EQ space, we're all going to benefit. So that's really fantastic. Thank you.
Pleasure. And there's lots more tips and strategies that people can employ, but that's a good place to start.
Yeah. And I will share links to the resources on your website as well, because they are so fantastic and very generously free as well. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time today, Amy. I adore every conversation I have with you, but to have one in this format and to be able to, give others an insight into this, really important space and such a high impact area that I don't think a lot of people talk about has been so valuable.
It's a pleasure. It's something I'm very passionate about. So it's been nice to talk about it with you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Hey, thanks for listening to another episode. If you don't want to miss one, make sure you subscribe to the show in your podcast app. And if you love it, be sure to share it with friends and colleagues who you think could benefit from increasing their digital marketing confidence. Want more? Head to marianneamies.com to find out how you can work with me directly, to reach out to have me speak at your event, or to grab yourself some free resources.